Welcome back to the shop, guys. This week's video, I had a family member reach out and ask if we could refinish this $100 piece of furniture they picked up at Goodwill, and so I obliged. Looking at it, as you can tell, it's not in terrible shape, but there are a lot of scratches and a lot of faded areas, and we're going to do the best we can to get this thing looking new again. The first thing I'm going to do here is just get the table cleaned off, some dust left over from previous projects. That way we're not just adding that back into the mix. So you can see I've grabbed the table. We're turning it upside down now. I'm going to take the legs off. There was a bit of a variety of screws in here, some Phillips head, some flathead. As you can see me right now just taking the flathead screwdriver and just taking those out. It's probably a little easier in my opinion. Pull all the screws out and get them set to center. We'll go ahead and take the base off of here. And the same process with the chairs here and the arms, just taking those off, getting everything ready to scrape and sand. Now this is solid oak, so it's going to make a great little project to stain, which is what the customer wanted. To add a nice top coat to it. I don't have to worry about any kind of veneers and that kind of stuff for sanding through. Now you'll notice as I'm sanding here, it does not seem to be cooperating all that good. So then I switched to the scraper. I think the varnish, probably a polyurethane, is just a little tougher, and I'm just wasting sandpaper. So taking the extra time to scrape that off and get down to a somewhat bare surface, I think is going to be the key in this one. Now, of course, I didn't want to go and show every single thing, scraping every little bit of it. But just know there was a lot of scraping involved in this, a lot of sanding. You can see there I got it down to bare wood, and you can see I'm going through with a pencil, just marking it out, and that acts as sort of a guide code if you've never done that. Mark the pencil all over your surface, take your sandpaper, and basically sand until all those pencil marks are gone, and you should have a good surface. You've sanded every area of that, and then you kind of do that with each grit, and that thing by the time you're done is smooth as butter. And basically just doing the same process to all these, the top, the arms, the seats. Oak is one of those woods that I think, I'm not saying it's underrated, but for a long time it was overused, and I didn't really care for it because possibly it's just the finish they put on it was just kind of a yellow look, and I don't really care for that. And you'll see on when we get done with this one. I found that probably a new appreciation for oak, but you know, over the last few years, woodworking with it and using hand planes on it and that kind of thing, it really tools very nicely. You know, if you take a hand plane across this thing, it really, I don't know, it's just hard to explain, but oak is one of those that just, it's really nice to work with now that I've kind of grown a better appreciation of it. And you can see here the steel or iron or whatever this might be, it had a lot of rust on it. So I scraped that down to basically bare metal. And in the next shot here, you can see it's kind of got a green tint, but this is a self-etching primer that any of this self-etching primer is supposed to have an acid in there that sort of eats into the metal and kind of prevents rust, and it, you know, adheres to the bare metal better than just a regular primer would. That's the reason we went with that one. And I didn't show doing all of that, but now we're into doing the paint, and this was an automotive base coat clear coat paint. And just so happened I had a pint of black that I'd mixed, and it was really close because each one of those little round bars, it was very difficult to get completely covered because they were so small and round. So I just kept having to go back and forth adding paint to it, just making sure everything was covered. And now a day or two later, we're back inside, and you can see I'm adding the stain. Ironically enough, the family member who reached out to me to get this done, they really loved the last project I done, in which we done a Bombay style chest where we had painted it black and stained the top. She really loved that color and decided on that same color to stain this table and the chairs, and it's just an absolutely beautiful color. It's a red mahogany by Minwax. I've had a lot of good success with those over the years, and that's why I stick with that one. One really neat thing about this stain is how it actually penetrates down into the grain, not only just for the color, but the, you know, the larger grain in oak, it actually stays in there and gives it a darker effect. And it makes it stand out from the rest of it. And that's one thing I really liked about this piece. So now we're just, you know, after I let it set for a few minutes, we take a paper towel and just wipe it back off. Make sure to get everything. It's basically any excess off. And you got to be careful too, especially, you notice I'm wearing gloves. Those can get stain on those as well, and you'll leave little prints. So you just got to be careful and get all that off there, because stain left on the surface does not really cure that good. And just to repeat, luckily with the stain, we can paint the bottom sides. I've got little wedges I set them up on. I can stain it, wipe it off, flip it over onto those wedges, and then stain again, and not really have to worry about any kind of problems. Now when we do the top coat, the water-based poly, we can't do that just because it'll damage the finish, but with the stain it works out great, and I can do all of it in one run. Now with the stain, you know, I can't remember exactly how long it tells you to wait before you do any type of top coat, but at minimum for me, I wait at least 24 hours. I'll stain it one day and come back the next day and add the top coat. But in this instance, just things happened to work out. It was actually 2 or 3 days later, so I know it was good and dry by then. And in this shot, you can see exactly what I'm talking about. That grain really just jumps out. It's just almost like it's got a black effect to the grain or whatever. It's just way darker than the rest of it. And of course, after I had the top done, I went ahead and started on the seats. I've got them all laid out here upside down. Staining them, kind of running through it fairly quick because it's just kind of the same old process. And after letting them sit for probably around 10 minutes or so, just wipe it back off and get off the excess. And speeding things up here, so, I've got it flipped over and staining those. You can see the arm pieces. I've got those set up on clamps because it's going to be way easier than trying to set those up on those little wedges. And going back to my go-to there, you can see I've got the polyacrylic in the matte finish. I really like the luster that matte gives it. It's not super glossy and that kind of stuff. It's easy to correct anything, and I think when it's actually done, it just gives a outstanding look that you can't get with a lot of other finishes. Going with the old cheap Harbor Freight spray gun again. I actually did have just a tiny little issue with the gun as I'm spraying the tabletop, but got it cleaned up, got it working again, so no big deal. And the good thing is, on these, it's not a huge amount of, we'll call it real estate, so it didn't take a heck of a lot of finish. And you can see I can spray out those seats and the tabletop fairly quickly. Going back to my tried and true method of just basically, like I've said in the past, just sort of being robotic and following along the plane of the piece, not moving your gun too much, swaying side to side and that kind of stuff, just staying level all the way across. Gives you a much better finish. Okay, and you can see the arms here, we're in hyper speed, just kind of showing you the process of getting through those. Okay, and luckily this stuff dries fairly quickly. So I think the same evening I painted these fairly early, so that evening I came back and flipped them over and done the actual top pieces. And then the way I do this, I like to do the bottoms first, let it dry, and then flip it over and do the top, because just at least in my mind, if you're going to have any kind of bad spots that turn out, it's better to do the top last. That way you can kind of correct any of that. Okay, and we've got that sprayed, and you can tell by now we're adding back the pieces, putting them back together. Got the top back on here. Now naturally, These were very small holes and they had to be lined up perfectly, so I just loosely started the screws in, get them all in there, and then we can drive them home. Same goes for the seats. You know, there are 4 very specific holes, and I had to kind of keep rotating just to make sure we had the right one in the right spot. Took a little bit to figure it out, but in the end it turned out good. Just adding the screws into the arms and the seats. There's a little bit of a different shot. You can kind of see what we're doing there. And here it is. I'm just basically, I was going to put this outside like it was when I first took the video, but it actually, you can't see it very much. It was raining quite heavy that day, so just had to set it up in my shop floor. It's not the most ideal for a good picture or video. I got my old heater in the background. It's just kind of, it's not the best thing to look at, but either way, I think it turned out good. You can see here how it went from the old to the new. And the owner loves it. I think it turned out great. Hopefully you like it too. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button if you would, and click the bell just so you know that when I'm uploading a new video. If you have any comments on this one, you know, have any kind of ideas as far as what color you would have went with, if it was something different, something along those lines, leave us a comment. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next video.